is a Bramble Jam podcast.
Welcome to Girls Gone Hallmark, a Hallmark review podcast. I'm Megan, and I'm a longtime Hallmark fan.
I'm Wendy. I'm a former Hallmark hater.
Today we're discussing Chicken Sisters Episode 8, The Best Chicken in Town, y'all, also known as the finale of the Chicken Sisters series, also titled Gaslighter on IMDb. Gotta admit, love that title.
And we are referring to Frank Jr., right?
I think but I think the pairing of Frank Jr. and Mr. Chicken is Team Gaslighter.
Warf emoji.
Hey, before we dive into our review, just a reminder that you can find us outside of the podcast. Hang out with us on Instagram. We have 2 accounts, Girls Gone Hallmark and Megan and Wendy.
We have a Facebook group. Hey, come talk about Chicken Sisters. We don't talk about this show a whole lot in the Facebook group because methinks a lot of people are not watching it.
I also think there's a big split of people that don't have Hallmark Plus.
That's why there are some that say like they tried to watch this series and tapped out after 2 or 3 episodes.
Also, I mentioned this in our Instagram and it's been mentioned in our Facebook group, but if you are a listener and you're like, I don't have Hallmark Plus and you want to watch these shows, I want to remind you that if you have a library card, many libraries partner with a company called Hoopla for ebooks, audiobooks, and they have something called Binge Pass, which gives you a 7-day access to Hallmark Plus. And you can check that out multiple times, so you don't need to just like wait for your 7 days. When this comes up in conversation and I mention Hoopla, people are like, oh no, my library uses Libby. They're not mutually exclusive, so many libraries use both. The only downside with Hoopla is typically your library has a limit on the number of holds that are allowed to be taken from Hoopla daily. And so sometimes I'll find that if I go later in the day, my library's max has been reached, and so I have to go back early in the morning. But Binge Pass on Hoopla is a great way to get access to Hallmark Plus to watch the shows that you may or may not be missing.
I have another alternative way.
Cool, tell me.
We got a message from Beth Ann who says that if you want to subscribe to Hallmark Plus, you can save some money using your Walmart Plus membership to get a discount. You get 25% off 4 months of Hallmark Plus.
Hey, nice. So if you're already a Walmart Plus subscriber.
Yeah.
And all of these things were coming into Black Friday, and streaming discounts are hot during Black Friday. That's always where I subscribe to Peacock because it's always $1. Hulu is often $1. We will see if Hallmark Plus will offer a deal, but Walmart Plus often has a Black Friday deal that week as well. So lots of different ways to get access to Hallmark Plus if you're wanting to. Okay, let's hear a synopsis for The Best Chicken in Town, y'all.
For whatever this is called. The synopsis goes, a final twist in the reality competition throws both the Mimi's and Franny's crews for a loop, and Frank Jr.'s true colors are revealed.
Layla Cohen wrote the script for episode 8. She had previously penned episode 4. It's the drop, y'all.
Monica Mitchell returns as director. She directed episode 7. It's just junk, y'all.
There was a Deadline article on October 24th, which is an interview with Annie Mabane, who is the show's creator, and a couple of things of note from that article. We have talked a lot about the book versus the TV series, and Mabane mentioned that the book was a jumping off point for an adaptation, which is a perspective that I appreciated, having read this article as well.
But don't you wish you would have said that? Don't you wish we would have known that going into the series?
Sure, but I wouldn't have been able to stop myself from making the comparisons.
Yeah, of course.
As she went on to talk about the choice for Frank Jr. to be alive versus dead, as in the novel, and it's because they wanted to show the conflict Amanda was dealing with in real time, as opposed to her just struggling with her marriage in the past versus memories. And it was interesting to explore why Frank Jr. was the way he was. Seeds are planted for a potential season 2. We've got the mom and pop versus corporate rivalry. We have, will Sabrina leave her big city life for a life in Merrimack with Gruster? And we also have the mysterious photo of Gus and the chicken farmer Jarvis. Who's your daddy? Now we know.
Who's your daddy, y'all?
Let's talk about a line that we took issue with in this article.
Go ahead.
Oh, you want me to?
Yeah.
So the Deadline interviewer talks about Shauna, who we love. They mentioned that she's so funny and a great addition. And Mebbane's line is, that actress was such a find. She's a comedy scene staple. She's been doing improv every Sunday night for like 20 years. Now, look, I love that insight because I think that improv experience shows because she's quick on screen.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't like is they use the phrase, that actress. She has a name, y'all, and it is Caitlin Howden.
Yeah. Justice for.
Justice for. We have some messages and emails we would like to discuss with you.
Yeah. So we received a couple of emails. This one is from Anonymous. It was not signed and the email address was super weird.
Interesting.
This person wrote, usually writers don't write the episodes individually. The entire writer's room, all of the writers' names you see across the season, work together, create the story, write together, etc. Just some helpful info on how most shows work.
I definitely was familiar with the concept of the writer's room. And I don't know if every show uses that, but Annie Mebane in this article does reference the writer's room. So, and then I think they just give writing credit to whoever
just randomly. They're
lead.
Like, oh, okay, I see.
And, I think like we're fans of the Nobody's Listening Right podcast hosted by Elizabeth Lame, who most recently was a writer on A Million Little Things, the series on ABC. She would mention like, oh, I wrote this episode. And so I do think often what will happen is we get certain writers assigned to a script, and then in the room, perhaps writers will either toss around storylines or workshop pieces of it, but full credit will go to whoever did the lion's share.
So I feel a little bit like
scolded,
chapped.
Yeah. Because we did say like, oh, we don't know how it works. We just didn't know how it worked on this show. I think that's your point.
And I think we are, if the episode says episode written by, and we share that information, like that is the information we've been told. This episode was written by Layla Cohen or whatever.
Right. But I think what they're responding to is in last week's episode, we had talked about how the different episodes have different tones based on the writers.
Yeah.
And so you were talking about like, how do we find cohesiveness and how is this all working? And so if they're all in a writer's room working together, that does make sense. I don't think every show works that way.
Our second email is from listener Paula, who says, we did a great job on episode 7. Thank you, Paula. She has watched episode 8 and loved it and mainly wants to say, yay, Amanda. She finally did the right thing. I knew she would. Great setup for season 2. And Frankie and Shauna, more than friends. It's not Shauna. It's Frankie and Lindsay, more than friends. Question mark, question mark.
I'd like to talk about it.
We're going to talk about that too.
Hey, let's take a quick break and we'll come right back to talk the key moments in this episode. All right, let's dive into some key moments from the Chicken Sisters finale, a series of big reveals in this episode.
Yeah, big.
We get a period piece throwback. I know you loved this. But this reveal is that Franny's husband is not the father of Mimi's baby.
You're not the father. I just had a Maury Povich.
That's interesting. Yes.
Don't you? When you
the lie detector says, that is a lie.
You're not the father.
So this was the start of a series of seeing red moments for me in this episode.
Oh, do tell.
So the further big reveal is, why would Franny's husband...
Why would he lie about it?
Same thing. Why would
Frank
Sr. lie? And a little bit later in the episode, we get the reveal. They lie to keep the women mad at the people that they have decided are bad. And oh boy, did this revelation fire me up. Let me tell you, this is not the political environment for me to be watching this episode of this show, because I thought, oh my gosh, the propaganda that is happening.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I do want to say that I actually cut this out of last week's episode. In last week's episode, I commented that Amanda and her husband were distant relatives. And I cut it out because I was like, am I remembering that wrong from the book? And I messaged a friend who read it and I was like,
Amanda and her husband? Oh, Frank.
Yeah, because they're like the Frankies and the Mimis and like
they somehow could be. Yeah.
yes. And I messaged a friend and I was like, did they hint at this? She's like, they didn't hint it. They like outright said it. And then they kind of just like, we're going to move on from that. So anyway, obviously they're not going with that here. We're not having Amanda and Frank be related, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
I don't want to dive into that.
I don't want to dive into that either. I get real in the weeds.
Big reveal number 2, Gus has MS.
Yes. Now in the book, she has Parkinson's, right?
I had some thoughts on the change, and Annie Mabane does comment on it, and I have her notes here. Her comment was allowed them to be more fluid with her symptoms. My thought is, look, tremors are a hallmark of Parkinson's, and I don't want to see an actor acting that. I think it is easier to portray a character with MS respectfully than it is to portray a character with Parkinson's.
Sure. Maybe a good choice then.
I think so.
And by her saying that they could be more fluid, I think people, I don't have MS. I have a friend who does. I think they have their good days and their bad days. So I think maybe it's easier to portray an actor who's having a better day than
Look, I worked for the National MS Society, and there are multiple types of MS, but there is a type, the type that President Bartlett had on the West Wing, called relapsing remitting, and you're literally at some point in remission, like your symptoms pull back. So it does come in waves for certain people, and so I think that makes it easier for them to tell the kind of story they want to tell here.
Exactly. Like she can be in the kitchen cooking
on some days,
and some days she can't. So
yes.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, let's talk about the chicken competition.
Sure.
Look, I love that everyone bails on Frank Jr. I love that even Nancy's like, peace.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to the light side. I hate. First of all, at the beginning of this scene, we have Shauna going over to Mr. Chicken, and I'm like, no, when she's like asking him for business advice.
I mean, I think Shauna is smarter than what we are.
Yes, and we learn that she in fact is.
Yes,
but I did have that like, don't get drawn in by the charm moment.
Yeah.
Look, when Mr. Chicken declares Frank Jr. and Franny's the winner, this is another seeing red moment for me. Like my head, I was like, that's not there. That's not right. What's happening here?
You're Sabrina in this moment.
Sabrina is absolutely magical.
Yes, great.
I laughed out loud when she's like, 2 chickens just crossed the road. But I really loved her speech when she's like, if I'm going to spend my whole life doing something, it has to be something my daughter's proud of.
You know what it reminded me of? The absolutely fantastic monologue from America Ferrera in Barbie.
Oh, yeah.
It gave me those feelings. Like she's like, this is unfair. If I'm going to do something, I got to be right by my kid. Like, yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. Yeah, because Sabrina is just like, enough with this like male toxicity BS. Like, I'm done. I'm over it. Yeah, I liked it. I agree with you. Like, the whole like when Frank Jr. presents his chicken to Mr. Chicken and he's like spouting those words that Mr. Chicken uses in the Hard podcast. Ugh, gross. And when Mr. Chicken was like awarding, whatever, declaring Frank Jr. as the winner, he's like, nevertheless, he persisted.
Yes. I have a tote bag with that on it.
I mean, it was funny, but then it just shows like what a dipshit this guy is. I enjoyed it. But I saw red as well. I was not happy about it.
I think it's a great setup for season 2. I love the reveal that like Shauna is going to franchise Chicken Sisters. I love that we have all the people that we love on the same side. I love that we're setting Frank Jr. up and Mr. Chicken as the villains here. Like we've made a clean break. I'm sure not clean, but there's a clear division here. Frank's not muddying the waters with all of these other women that we know and
now
love.
clear this up for me, because when Shauna approaches the Chicken Sisters and she's like, look, I want to franchise this. I want 2 restaurants, and I've already talked to the mayor about getting like getting a restaurant a franchise restaurant on the main road. That's the Pancake House that was originally closed that then we see Mr. Chicken and Frank Jr. buying. Are you sure?
Yeah. Because Frank Jr., that Pancake House is outside of the town lines. And Frank Jr., when he's a couple episodes ago talking to Mr. Chicken, he's like, yeah, the mayor doesn't allow franchises on the main road. That's why this is just out of town.
Oh, and that's why it does poorly, because it's out of town.
I think so. I don't remember that piece, but
Got
that's
it.
going to
Okay.
be their new Mr. Chicken or whatever they're
Yeah.
calling it. And then Franny's is going to be the one in town that is going to be allowed to be a
Got
franchise.
it. Thank you for clearing that up for me, because I was thinking that they had stole it away from Shauna somehow, but
No, it's just going to be competing restaurants in town. Part deux.
I like it.
Me too. I think it's great. I think it's going to be really fun. And I think it makes the lines very clear, like who we're rooting for, who we're rooting against. Is there a chance for a Frank Jr. redemption story? Annie Mabane says yes. Nancy says, like, you got to grow up and I can't do the growing up for you.
Yeah, I liked all that.
A lot of people had their moments. I really want to talk about Amanda's decision. I mean, obviously she leaves Frank Jr. There's a lot I love about what Amanda does. You know, she's like, I want you to move out. And he's like, this is our house. And she's like, who makes it a home? And then she's like, am I the one who seasonally decorates it? I just made me laugh.
Yeah.
She has her conversation with Sergio and she's like, I just got to do me for a little bit.
Which I loved.
Me too.
Because it take a minute. You don't need to jump from into one frying pan into another. Wow, that feels like a chicken pun. But right, like she can take a minute. And I was a little bit bothered that he was bothered by that.
Yeah, that he was hurt by it. Yeah, to me, it seems like if you see this as a long-term thing and he had been hinting at like, I'm not a playboy anymore. I'm putting down roots. Then you should want her to come to you with a clear heart and a clear eyes, not carrying all his baggage from her terrible marriage and trying to turn your relationship into everything her marriage wasn't.
Right.
She needs to clean break, be on her own, and then figure out what the heck, who she is. Like,
Right.
you don't want her to come in, I hate to say baggage, but she's got to clear some things out.
Yeah. However, what I didn't like is that then he gets a text from her. Oh, you don't think it's...
That's his ex. Because did you see the name on it? It says do not answer.
I assumed it was Amanda.
I don't think so.
Oh my God.
I think it's his ex.
That makes it even better because I was disappointed at Amanda here. Like, no, don't go running back to him now after you've just told him.
Of course, it's unclear because it says do not answer. So we don't know. But I felt very strongly that was his ex coming back into the picture.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interest peaked. Yes. Speaking of everybody having their moments, I did love that Nancy threw out all Frank Sr.'s shit. She was ready to move on. And then, of course, we see her go out with the pastor guy at the end.
Yeah, that's so great.
That was great. I loved how Nancy opened her home up to Gus.
Yes.
Love that. I love that Gus is repairing her relationship with her daughters.
I'm going to let my inside thoughts out more often, she says.
Oh my God. So good. That was so good. And I love May and Jay together. And Jay's his little short scene, just basically like how he's falling in love with Marinac, walking around, eating this ice cream, skipping rocks. I freaking loved it.
I loved that too. And I also love when they're talking about like, oh, we're going to make Chicken Sisters a thing. And Jay is talking about like how he's going to help. And he's like, oh, am I getting all mergers and acquisitions? And May's like, don't you need a break? He's like, oh, not for my family. I'll do it for my family.
Yeah, I love that. May had some really good scenes. One in particular is when Shauna comes to the Chicken Sisters and she's like saying like, here, I'm rich, y'all. I can invest in your thing.
I have 14 jobs.
And Nancy's like, well, I don't mean to sound like your mom, but maybe, you know what, she's telling her not to do it. And May turns around to her and goes, stop talking. Stop talking. I thought it was so great. I just thought it was a great actor choice by Genevieve Angelson.
She also, there's a moment, you know, Sergio tries to punch Frank Jr. He punches the wall. He's unable to cook. And she's May's like, what are we going to do? And she's like, I don't suppose you can cook with one hand, can you? And her delivery is so great.
Yeah, I love her. You know what we've never talked about? How freaking jacked she is.
I know her arms. That scene at the drop, she's wearing like a sleeveless vest and her arms and shoulders look great. She's also in a tank top in the It's Just Junk Y'all episode. Mm-hmm.
She's very fit. I like those muscles. All right. Did you have any other? Oh, the one we didn't talk about that was mentioned in our
I was wondering if I was going to save it for my Cluckworthy moments.
Oh.
But we did talk about one of my favorite storylines.
Go for it.
It's Lindsay and Frankie.
I didn't see that coming from a mile away.
Neither did I. I just was looking forward to their reconciliation and they're like, yeah, we're real friends.
Yeah.
And then we realized that they're both falling in love with each other.
I thought it was nicely done too with the narrator who explains what is happening here. Like now Frankie realizes what heartbreak feels like or whatever. I thought it was like great.
A heart can only break two ways or a heart needs two sides to break. So great. And Frankie's look as Lindsay's driving away.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah, it was good. This did get brought up in our Facebook group and somebody was like, oh, basically didn't read it that way. And I was like, no,
It's definitely
we're going that way.
We're
which
going that
I
way.
kind of like.
Sure. I love it.
Yeah. I'm like, great. Let's do it. With Kitchen Clash ending, I was kind of sad, like with Sabrina and Lindsay leaving. I love the scene when Ruster comes out and like says, I can fix things or whatever. Because she's like, you don't want me. I'm broken. And he's like, I can fix things.
That's a great line.
And I don't know if you noticed too with the subtitles, he goes, here's some gorp for you. And I was like, what the hell is gorp? I had to look it up. It's like trail mix apparently.
Oh yeah. I was a Girl Scout. We made gorp at the Girl Scout house.
Oh,
Never went to the Scout house.
no.
We made gorp. We made walking sticks. That's the whole thing. We made butter.
Is it realistic that Sabrina and Lindsay are going to come back to town?
I think so.
Is Sabrina going to leave her life of hosting TV shows?
But why does she need to be based in New York to have
She
that life if
doesn't.
she's traveling all the time?
I don't think she does.
Or maybe she and May are going to create something together.
Oh, I love that idea.
I think there's a lot of things. Look, she left Kitchen Clash, so Sabrina's
And May basically left Sparkling.
fully left Sparkling.
Yeah.
So they're both free. So there's a lot of room to play.
They could create a podcast together.
Oh my gosh. So I have to ask you, did this episode bring you back around on the show?
Okay. In my notes here, I have this big bolded paragraph. And I have thought a lot about this episode and the series as a whole since finishing it. And I did really enjoy this episode. And I've been thinking about the things, the criticisms that I've had. Like I thought there was some uneven storytelling and the pace of the show and the inability to dig deeper into the stories of our characters. I think there's a lot of like maybe the time, because it's a 45-minute episode, you just can't get into it. Those were a lot of my criticisms. But as a whole, I think I liked it.
Good. Did we need all of the things that were so frustrating about this show to bring us around to this sort of resolution? I always liked this show more than you did, so I didn't need to be sold.
Okay. What I like about it, looking back now, I like that they're looking at generational trauma. They're looking at ending generational trauma. I like that Hallmark gave us a super shitty, unlikable character with Frank Jr. And understanding how he became that person. I think those are interesting stories. I just don't know. I just wish we could have gotten there sooner. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. But my whole point is I do like...
Sooner than 8 episodes?
Maybe it needed to be 10 episodes. I don't know. I don't know. It just needed a little bit, like I wanted to claw into some of like the the deeper themes, but I mean, I think it's supposed to be like a little bit lighthearted too.
For sure.
I wonder what this show would look like if it was like on Netflix or Hulu.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know? So with that in mind, I did like it. I like that the women finally all come together at the end and get on the same freaking page.
Yeah, but it's not a I hate men club, right? You know, we've got great men. We have Kenneth and we have Patrick and we have Jay and we have Sergio, who's a good dude. We have Gruster. There's a lot of dudes to root for in this show.
Sure. Yeah. So I liked it. I would watch season 2.
Kicking and screaming. Hey, let's talk some Cluckworthy moments.
Not kicking and screaming. Some of my favorite Cluck-worthy moments, and we've talked about them. I love seeing a softer Gus.
Even just the effect of putting her in a wheelchair just has that like instant effect.
Yeah.
You know, Gin's like, I want you to take it easy. And they're like, fat chance of that happening. He's like, all right, then you're in a wheelchair, man.
Yeah. He's going to be in the hospital then. Like there was a trade-off here. Talk about an actor super underused, right?
Wendy Malick or Gin?
Again, Cardi Wong.
Yeah. Let's expand his character more. And maybe we'll see more of that now that we have a full diagnosis. But you know what's interesting is like he appears to be like a doctor that practices Western medicine. He's the doctor that's there in the hospital, but he's also a doctor who, you know, performs some alternative treatments like acupuncture. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, and I can see in their small town be seen as like voodoo almost.
Right?
You know? I really love Sabrina when she pops off about quitting. One of my favorite scenes. I need Rakia Bernard to come back for season 2.
Yeah, this show doesn't work to me without her.
No, she's a vital part of the
Yeah, the energy
ensemble
she
cast.
brings is really necessary.
Yes. So I like that. I like bring back she and Lindsay.
Of course. The Frankie and Lindsay was the most touching storyline of the finale for me, and I particularly because it was so unexpected, and I'm really excited for it. And I think they really sold it to me. Did you hear? Are you familiar with the Highwomen?
No.
Their song "Crowded Table" plays. That's a great song. It touches me as the mother of growing children who are fleeing the nest. It was great song choice in this episode.
Yeah, we haven't talked a ton about the music in this show other than that Ferris Bueller drop. I had read somewhere that they had used a lot of they used Phoebe Bridgers and Boy Genius throughout this show. I would be interested in going back and looking at the
I would like them to publish a playlist.
Yeah.
Annie Mabane in that interview we referenced earlier calls it y'alternative.
Yeah.
I just think it's I think there's a lot of country pop crossover in popular music these days.
I think she mentioned a band called Nickel Creek, which is like one of my sister's favorite bands. Yeah, isn't that funny?
That's not a name I've heard before.
Yeah. Anyway, what do you have any more click-worthy moments?
No. Who's your feathered friend of the week?
Amanda, if you can
Oh my
believe
goodness.
it. I have been real hard on Amanda all season long. I am in agreement with listener Paula. I am so happy that Amanda got there. She realizes Frank Jr. isn't it, and she stops the cycle. Like, I just think we finally got there. I was very happy.
That makes me happy. I agree. She's real strong in this episode. My feathered friend of the week is Sabrina. She just brings it in that chicken competition, and she brought the energy that I needed. Look, you can't change the outcome of the competition. Mr. Chicken's their biggest sponsor. You can't change it, but she is not going to go down without a fight. And I needed to see it.
I did think it was kind of funny that her boss was this like old white dude.
Of course.
I think it was perfect casting.
Yes,
and on purpose,
of
I'm
course.
sure. Yeah, that was good. It was good.
We hope you enjoyed this series of reviews from us over here at Girls Gone Hallmark. Chicken Sisters is over, but the reviews just keep on coming. We invite you to check out our show notes to see the full list of movies we're reviewing over the next 2 months. dive into those. We're countdown to Christmas. We're talking groomsmen. And thank you for listening to this episode of Girls Gone Hallmark, a Bramble Jam podcast. If you love this podcast, we do love your 5-star ratings and your reviews. You can leave them in most any podcast app that you're using, but if you look at your app and it doesn't have a place to leave reviews, another way that you can do that is just open up the Apple Podcast app, even if you don't listen there. I'm going to read a recent 5-star review from Brenda, who says, Girls Gone Hallmark is my favorite podcast, and it's great to hear their origin story and how they started podcasting Hallmark content. Their reviews are enjoyable because it's clear they enjoy doing them. Megan and Wendy's approach is from a place of honesty in their reviews. They may not like a movie, but their review is respectful, and they don't mock or make fun of it like other reviews I've heard. It's great to hear they've leveled up and joined the Bramble Jam Network. Thank you, Brenda. And thank you for listening. We'll be back with more reviews. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, friends, before we go, just a quick heads up. You're about to hear some ads. These little gems help us keep the show running and the Hallmark love flowing. So do with that info what you will. Grab a snack, hit the skip button, or maybe, just maybe, listen in and discover your new favorite product. Bye.